good morning. Good morning, and thank you for being here. And I don't want to miss the opportunity to talk about what a great leadership team we have, both with Aaron and with Cindy. And I especially want to note that this is the 150th year, not the 100th, the 150th year of celebrating women's suffrage. And so, Aaron, well done. Thank you for leading this organization. It's also a great pleasure to be here this year, having had a little bit of time to get ahead of this forum. Last year, you may remember that about 7 days ago, the election had happened. And this forum ended with two former governors who were giving me advice. And I had the opportunity last night to read an editorial that Mike Sullivan promised he would send, which he did. That was written by Millward Simpson back in the 50s about the challenges facing Wyoming. And let's see, it was diversifying our economy. It was making sure that the energy economy had an opportunity to grow. It was making sure that our children would stay in state. And it was making sure that our university would be strong, among other things that I think you all probably recognize from now. So the opportunity to think about that and to think about the challenges we have today is not something that is new to Wyoming or indeed new to me. I was just coming out of college in 1980, and 1980, you may remember, was a time when my former boss at Apache Corporation, Raymond Plank, said, "I wish I knew that Ronald Reagan was trying to break the back of the Soviet Union because our energy economy fell apart." You may remember that. That prices fell apart. We had 55-mile-an-hour speed limits, and Wyoming really was in a tailspin. And I have to say, it was a very challenging time. But our state stood strong. We grew businesses. In fact, my wife at the time, the late Sally Gordon, and I started a business that grew. Now I have to say that some of the other industries, Cannon Industries and others that started around the same time, have continued and grown and expanded and now offer some opportunities for the future. But before I get too far into what I want to say, I do want to say that it is a great pleasure to have the opportunity to welcome, and I think there are several members of my team. I saw Corin Schmidt here, so I'd like cabinet members to please stand up and be recognized if they're here. Darren's there, Sandy, others. I want to thank you personally for your willingness to step forward in these challenging times and really provide the leadership that is going to be necessary as we talk about how we make our government leaner, more efficient, deliver more, and really embrace where we are going. And that's a large part of what this conference is going to be. It was kind of humbling to me the other day. Last night I spoke about my grandchild who came about 6 days after the election. So on November 6th last year, I was flying high. On November 12th, I was put in my place. And so I want to relate a recent story. Michael Perlman, who is my press person, his job is to track what's going on in the country, and he came the other day to say, you know, Mark, it looks like you're the fourth most popular governor in the country. Now, there were two comments that came about, one from my wife. Afterwards, she said, well, yeah, 30% of the people don't even know who you are. Thank you, Sal, or Jenny. You will hear from Jenny a little bit later. And then my staff, who I'd like to recognize here. Staff, could you all stand, please? If you're... Betsy Anderson, the deputy chief of staff, who also served with me in the treasurer's office. Betsy's comment was, "Who'd they ask? Your family?" So I really come to this job with a unique perspective that is humbled every day by people who are smarter than me and have a greater opportunity to embrace you. And I put that in a context that I think is really a hopeful note to play. And I'll start to talk a little bit about the details here in a moment. But recently I had the opportunity to listen to Tom Friedman, and I've been reading his book, Thank You for Being Late. I see our next speaker shaking his head. And Tom's point is that really at this stage of society, and you think about it, it wasn't very long ago, it was actually maybe 12 years ago that Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone, and now we've gone through successive generations. But what that device and all that is associated with Google products and everything else has done has been to make it possible for us to do amazing things with communication anywhere in the world right now. And I thank you, by the way, for this. You probably might be watching the impeachment on your device at this point and listening to me. I'm more interesting, I think. But nonetheless, that particular proceeding can be watched all over the world right now in a way that never could be done before. I can remember when you would have an overseas call. We used to have people from Britain that would come and visit the ranch, and they'd call from time to time, and you would have this very halting conversation. You would wait for a pause. And this was back in the 1980s. And now you think about it, people are on Skype all the time. The world truly is flat. And also at the same time, news is coming in huge waves. And it's coming in a very oppressive kind of way. Depending on your point of view, you can find exactly what you're looking for. And I think a lot of what's happening in Wyoming right now is being flavored by that sense of an overwhelming presence with renewables coming online and carbon sequestration and carbon neutral policies, et cetera, et cetera. And we hear that on a steady drumbeat. What Tom Friedman talks about is that the hope for our country, and I think this is really one of the things that Wyoming excels in. The hope for our country is the fact that it's hard to trust any kind of online internet. You know, you remember the ad about I met him on the internet and all that. It's hard to trust that detail now. It's hard to trust our news. You have to have a frame of reference. You have to have perspective. That's why it's so important we have the universities that we do. But where we feel most comfortable is when we're closest to the ground, is when we're able to connect directly with our leadership, with our legislators. We feel most connected to our local town councils. And he finds a great solace for government in making sure that our government will eventually, our people will eventually turn back to the most local levels of government and look for the solutions there. And that's what's exciting about this program, Cindy, what you've done. But I don't think it's any secret to you that we're seeing economic analysis of federal data that's showing deficits ahead. You know, this Power Wyoming group that I stood up to really give a transparent look at what our future is, and you'll hear more about that in the next couple of days, says that we should expect transitions, job losses, maybe some population losses as well. We can see policies at a federal level that are either existing and being misinterpreted or misapplied, or may come with different administrations that can make that effect even worse. I'm happy to say that this year we are fortunate that we have met our standard agency budgets. That doesn't mean we're not looking for ways that we can lean up and make more efficient. A lot of the work that was done for the Efficiency Commission and others was already underway by our agencies. I've encouraged them to figure out ways to be more synergistic, make a bigger effort at trying to lean up, trying to bring a cost consciousness. We will look with this budget to make future budgets easier and more understandable with a logic about how we have to cut. We're going to cut by program, not by just making adjustments across of a 2% or a 5% adjustment. We have done that. We can't afford to do that now. We will have to talk about programs. Director Reiner from YDOT and I have had this conversation. We do have a shortfall on funding for our roads. And I told Director Reiner, I think it's important that people understand if they want really good roads, we're going to have to make sure that we keep those roads that are important for commerce available and on top quality. It's nice to hear that our roads are the best in the state. Just heard that on the news this morning. But there may be roads that fall by the wayside. That's a result of not being able to fund. But we need to be very thoughtful as we approach these things. I do believe that the solutions exist, and together we can move down the track to make sure that we have a bright future. Part of this conference is about what do we do to diversify not only our industries and businesses, which is absolutely essential, but the ways that those businesses and industries can be supported and help support our government. Diversification is happening across the spectrum. You know, I think about the stuff that's happening in agriculture. I think about what's happening in the cultural economy in places like Sheridan. I think about the excitement of what's happening right now in the energy sector. Never has there been more transition and more change. Ruefully, I'm reminded by my good friend President Perkins, who about the day after the election said, "Congratulations, Gordon, you're going to be the governor who's going to have to be here during the transition. Good luck." Thank you, Senator Perkins. But we also have exciting opportunities with blockchain and new forms of commerce that are enabled by things like Bitcoin and tokenization, so that now we can figure out a way that we can truly stand up a real market, not one that's built on policy, but a real market on ecosystem services like better water management, like better carbon sequestration. And think of it, what state is better positioned to take on this new challenge of carbon sequestration than Wyoming? I will say, and if you read The Economist 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, there was a very detailed column that was on climate change. I recommend it to you. In all the hyperbole about the changes that are going to come, this was the most even-handed and thoughtful piece that I have read on the notion of climate change and how energy is going to change. And what it basically said is, yes, it will transition, but it will go slowly. So that gives us some opportunity and ways to meet the opportunities to our benefit. And I'm really looking forward to this conference to be able to help understand what our opportunities are and how to take the best advantage of them. Gathering the industry together like we have here, Cindy, promotes great ideas that benefit all citizens. So I want you to think openly and wisely about the future. I want to congratulate the leaders who are going to be inducted tonight. They all had a vision. They all paid it forward. Mick McMurray's famous comment, Howard Woody, Kelly Lockhart. And I'm glad you're going to have a chance to hear from Jenny. I have been blessed to be married to one of the most remarkably wonderful women. And what I will say about Jenny and her story is really her dad's story. And that's what I think is about, America is about. Her dad lost his home in the 30s. And when on the road, he was a hobo. He proudly admitted that he was a hobo. He worked on the Grand Coulee Dam. He joined the Navy. He found out that he could fly from one island in the Pacific Theater to another to see his brother he hadn't seen in 10 years. So he got on a plane and landed on the other island. But then the problem was, how do you get back? So instead of being AWOL, he joined the Army and eventually ended up in the Air Force, married an Austrian woman. They had 10 kids. The story goes like this. After Jesse came along, the first, Bob went to Gertrude and said, "So Gertrude, you want to do that again?" Now, any of you who know German will know what this joke is, but she said, "Nine, nine." And he said, fine, Gertrude, we'll do that. But in any event, all of those kids have a college education. Half of them did it on the GI Bill. One of them is now in charge of the pathology unit at Walter Reed Hospital. That is the American success story, from nothing to exceptional opportunity. That's what Wyoming is about. And I want to leave you with the quote that drove me through last year in the election. And it comes from T.A. Larson. T.A. Larson wrote 2 books about Wyoming history. I'm a historian. The first one is a very big tome that most of us are familiar with. The other was a golden book that was written on almost every state, but Wyoming's was written by T.A. Larson. And about the last chapter, which was written in 1979, he said, almost no part of the country has the opportunity now facing Wyoming to demonstrate what America could have been if developers and planners had traded some short-term profits for long-term gains. And with that, thank you very much for being here. Cindy, congratulations again. Aaron, what a phenomenal opportunity for this state to have this conversation. Thank you for your leadership, and have a wonderful, wonderful meeting. Thank you very much.